His Excellency, Bishop Richard Williamson, formerly of the Society of St. Pius X, is dead. Tender rest grant to him, O Lord, and patronage upon him. May his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed in mercy God rest in peace. Amen. Now, Richard Williamson, a convert to the Catholic faith, one of the 4 bishops chosen by Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre at Econ to succeed him as a bishop for the society, was a very controversial figure. I do not think anyone would challenge that statement. He did a lot of good, but I also would argue he did a lot of harm. And I think it is fair to address some of the things which I think he did right and wrong in this video during his life. Overall, my opinion of him is that he did more good than harm. And at least had the best, and in all situations, I do think he at least tried to have the best of intentions. That being said, I think sometimes his ego, which we all have, may have gotten in the way. And I think that sometimes he was so paranoid about the way the world was going that anything that was mainstream that did not seem on the right of things was a conspiracy. So let's start off with things I think he did get right. And I know there have been people, especially per the fraternity of St. Peter, and in the side of even in the side of Pius X might attack me for this, but I think it is fair to say he was 100% correct in his opposition to deal with Rome. 1,000%. And to those of you who may be watching who are not traditional Catholic, I know that people, you think of Richard Williamson, it is not the first thing that comes up is his negotiations with Rome and how he opposed them. That is actually probably the main thing that he did. That was his main work, and that is the main thing he was known for, being in the traditional movement, for being extremely vocal about how making the Society of St. Pius X making a deal with Rome would be a very bad idea and betrayal of the traditional Catholic faith. And he was right. Since his departure from the Society of St. Pius X, we have since seen Pachamama rituals in the Vatican. We've seen the blessing of same-sex relationships issued by under fiducia supplicans, which, by the way, please stop gaslighting me. The decree literally says they're blessing couples, i.e. not 2 individuals. And it doesn't say to bless them so that they get out of sin. It says to give an ascension of praise for whatever is good in the relationship. Which, if it's positive and healthy, it's holding a sinful relationship together. That is the Bible. There is nothing good in it. That is the historic teaching of the Catholic faith. God loves them and everything. And anyone can get a blessing on their own, but to bless the relationship, which is what is going on, is sinful. Ecumenism is still rampant, which was condemned by Pope Pius XI in Mortalem Animos. Don't even get me started on the Church Fathers. And whenever, such as Ignatius of Antioch, who in his letter to Smyrnians said that those who do not believe in the real presence should be shunned, and you should hold aloof from them, and that they are unsaved, etc. Whenever you point all these facts out to post-Vatican II Catholics today, they will call you, quote, and I have been called this even recently by a member of the priestly fraternity of St. Peter. If you want to know where Trad's making deals with Rome goes, call me, quote, quote, museum Catholic, that I should just listen and follow orders. 100%. Where there should be faith, there is obedience to the local bishop, no matter how insane or crazy or even heretical. Yes, heretical. These things that I've talked about have been formally de fide condemned by the church. Historically, if you believe in them, it doesn't matter what position you have in the church, you've excommunicated yourself. Well, you need to be able to create. No, you don't. Divine law. It's automatically excommunication. That is not an opinion. That is a statement of fact. Baltimore Catechism, basic Baltimore Catechism. If you renounce the Catholic faith, you stop being a Catholic. You put yourself outside the union of the church by that very fact itself. This is a common, basic 101 Catholic theology. And traditional Catholics are asking, why doesn't it seem to apply to the bishops doing the exact same thing? Richard Williamson was right that he wasn't a sedevacantist, but he was right in saying there's craziness going on here. The chance of us being taken over is too great. We need to keep a distance. And he was right in saying this. Remember in the Bible, King David, after many attempts, Saul had come again to chase after him. David snuck into his camp, took his spear and water bottle from his head, walked out, then cried out from a distance saying, "Stop harassing me, I'm loyal." And when Saul invited him to come back, he said, "No, I'm not." Because David knew Saul's heart, that he was going to fall into his hands one day unless he was careful. So he knew not to believe Saul's overtures, as nice it would have been to go back and serve Saul, his king, again. David knew he couldn't have done it. That is what Williamson did. He called it out when it was not popular. Now, some of the ways, and that is a statement of fact that it needs to be pointed out to anyone who criticizes Williamson for being disobedient to the church, etc., etc. No, he was absolutely correct. And I know all the responses I'm going to get down below. You're a schismatic, you're this and that, etc., etc., etc. Heard it all before. Let's ignore the fact I'm not a theologian. My priest says I should do this and this. I guess Pachamama worship's okay. It's not my place to judge. Yeah, that's essentially what it's feeling like with mainline Catholics these days. This is why I'm SSPX. Never mind the fact that Didache says that if a teacher teaches you something different with contrary to the faith, you're not to hear him. You're to not depart from him. Didache chapter 11. They will, of course, ignore the fact and still say they are still the continuation of the early church and quote these same church fathers when it suits them. They will not quote the church fathers when it outright condemns their obvious heresy and their obvious adherence to heretics. Williamson was correct. Now, not every way he went about this was right. Williamson was not the only bishop who was pushing it back against Bishop Fillet and making a deal with Rome. There were numerous priests, and there were the other bishops of the society did so as well, both de Galarreta and de Malaris. They, however, were not expelled because they were blunt, but they did it very respectfully. Williamson was obnoxious. If he thought you were wrong, you would know it. I'll be charitable and say he was kind of like St. Jerome had to leave Rome because of how blunt he was. He would openly accuse Fillet of everything publicly. And I remember being on the Resistance website. Now, I still agree with SSPX Resistance that now is not the time to make a deal with Rome. It's definitely less than ever now. But some of the things they were doing, I know some of the people who were supporting him, it showed pictures of Fillet bending over, shaking someone's hand, and the spectral cross would just slightly go this way. And he says, "See, he's denying Jesus Christ." Some of the people he associated with were quite insane. And it arguably lacks certain charity, which was the fault. Saints had this fault. Brother Andre Bessette of Montreal famously was very blunt, very direct to the point, but it was a fault. And he acknowledged it a fault. Williamson really didn't acknowledge it to be a fault, from what I understand. He would probably write off front of us, and he wrote off calls be more polite and well-mannered in this regard as swimming in chocolate, more or less, which was an overreaction to an extreme wokeness and extreme political correctness that we have today. It's gone too far, but Williamson overreacted. I think that will be fair to say. We should have good manners and should still respect others. Williamson also was famously a conspiracy theorist. And yeah, he was a libertarian conspiracy theorist, and it was not good. Now, I will say this is probably from a faith standpoint, overall, some of these other theories have problems, which you can probably guess what I'm going to get into. But one of my main theological problems with his approach was his obsession with, oh, we're going to live in a police state that's going to tell us what to do and what to think. Like, you realize what happens in a traditional Catholic state. In the syllabus of errors, it's the notion of this radical freedom of saying and thinking and doing whatever you want when you want without any hindrance whatsoever is not something that would mesh well with a traditional Catholic state as outlined in the syllabus of errors. Notably, heresy would and openly blaspheming the faith of Jesus Christ would probably not go down well in a traditional Catholic state under Catholic teaching. So I do find his obsession with the police state evil, while motivated by concerns of having the truth shut down on his part. I certainly will grant him that. I do find that his approach to be logically inconsistent, especially with his affinity for George Orwell, who was a socialist, I might add. So if you're talking about reading books that aren't from people who are not in line with the Catholic faith, reading books inspired by a literal socialist is probably not so great. Now, that is not saying he never had any points in this matter, but I think his obsession with it, especially considering the English-speaking world is heavily influenced by American culture, which is rooted in Freemasonry, which does lean heavily into human freedom too much and makes an idol of it, I do think that he went too far and may have enabled people unintentionally. Among his conspiracy theories, none of which I agree with. I don't agree with any of these. And I will say this, one of the things I know a lot of Trackhouse and SSPXers, certain SSPXers have come forward to me and said how much they despise this, is how they despise being associated with these conspiracy theories because of things Richard Williamson said and did, would be being a 9/11 truther, global warming denial, and probably the biggest one of them all would be, of course, Holocaust denial. I know a lot of Trackhouse who do not like being lumped in with these theories, and I certainly would have to say that regardless of anyone who's watching this video, I'm sure there's going to be some Trackhouse who's going to be a Holocaust denier watching this. I'm going to say this. Denying of the Holocaust is not an article of faith for the Catholic Church. Even if every Holocaust denier was proven 100% right, it is not under obligation of faith to deny the Holocaust, or to think the 9/11 was an inside job, or to think the global warming is real, or to think the global warming is fake, or is man-made, or is a hoax, etc., or are real for that matter. You cannot label me with heresy, and a lot of Caths in the SSPX resistance crowd, which a bunch of SSPXers who split off and followed Williamson, a lot of them have started acting like these people, like these things are articles of the Catholic faith. I remember chatting with one SSPX MC priest online who said if he knew someone who got vaccinated against COVID, that they should be denied the sacraments. That is adding things to the Catholic faith, to this positive faith, and it is wrong to do so. That is flirting with heresy, in my honest opinion, is to treat these things like they are articles of faith. As for the Holocaust denial, I'll give you some points in particular why I find that one particularly. I want to say the polite side of me wants to say problematic. The blunt and honest side of me wants to say odious. Would be how it has enabled people to promote a certain lack of charity, or has given people who are more interested in having their own views confirmed, to be obnoxious, it just enables people who have a great lack of charity. Now, I will point some certain things out about Holocaust deniers. Now, I have actually watched some of their YouTube videos. Like, okay, someone said, okay, I listen to my theories. Okay, I listen to other people's opinions, even those I don't agree with. The argument of Holocaust deniers is that it wasn't so bad. Hitler was only negligent, and his negligence caused the death of only 100,000 people. Just a small number. 100,000 people, and then the gas chambers and all the fires. That wasn't real. That was just because the children were so traumatized and horrified that they hallucinated it. That is literally, you can look up the Adeline Institute and Holocaust in our YouTube videos, and that is what they will say. That is the great, it wasn't so bad. We just killed off, we just took 100,000 people, traumatized a bunch of people to the point of hallucinating gas chambers, and 100,000 people in real life died. The only way that would sound good is if put next to 6 million. That's why that's why they always start with 6 million people didn't die. Because if you started with the 100,000 people who did, it would sound insane. It would sound psychotic to anyone with a shred of natural morality. When you point this out to certain people, they will then try to justify their lack of charity. By the way, I would point out that in Catholic teaching, this is why, and I have, after examining the situation, being open-minded, I do believe Holocaust denial is a sin now. Because one of the ways you can share in the sin of another is by defense of the ill done, or by silence. And this is one of the reasons why I am addressing this, is that I cannot keep silent. I do not want to share in the sin of it. It is wrong. Defending the ill done, even 100,000 people dying through negligence and having it conducted in such a horrific way, is a grave mortal sin. That is an ill. That is wrong. These people will then try to justify their grave lack of charity by citing old papal decrees. So they will also point out the decree of Pope Paul IV, cum nimis absurdum, essentially arguing that it's absurd, which is a decree, it's a real decree, arguing that it is absurd for the Jewish people rule over Christian people. They'll cite other ecumenical councils that say that Jewish people should be segregated in ghettos. Okay, there are two things of this. One, I read some of these decrees, certainly ones from the councils and the ecumenical councils. These decrees are usually brought in because you get a certain minority among the Jewish population who act like bigots and they're obnoxious, or there is wider concerns about orthodoxy in the Christian world at the time. In the time of Pope Paul IV, for example, the Protestant Reformation was raging, and so it was not an era of you could do religious tolerance very, very well, or showing kindness. It was just not the thing that was going on anywhere towards anyone, for better or for worse. Secondly, so there is that context. It is a time when there was a need by the church to crack down on just heresy, period, for the sake of its own survival, the sake of legitimate concern for souls. Secondly, and this is more importantly, this is actually not the historic approach of the church. Throughout the Middle Ages, the church, I remember sitting in a class, I was in university, class on the Protestant Reformation, and even as anti-Christian, anti-Catholic as the professor was, one of the professors said was, look, this was actually not something that went on in the Middle Ages, at least on the part of the church, on the Catholic Church and its hierarchy. In the Middle Ages, hierarchy of the Catholic Church actually promoted tolerance towards the Jewish people. It was only when the Protestant Reformation came along, and there was all these concerns across the board with orthodoxy everywhere, it was in the culture of clamping down everything, that these decrees came up. So, for example, there's the famous papal decree on the papal protection of the Jews. Pope Gregory X, 1271. Just recent random passages from it. We decree, moreover, that no Christian shall compel them or any other group to come to baptism unwillingly. But if anyone shall take refuge of his own accord with the Christians because of conviction, then after his intention will have been manifest, he shall remain a Christian without any intrigue. For indeed, that person who is known to have come to Christian baptism not freely but willingly is not believed to possess the Christian faith. Quote, another quote from the same decree, quote, moreover, no Christian shall presume to seize, imprison, wound, torture, mutilate, kill, or inflict violence on them. Furthermore, no one shall presume to accept by judicial action of the authorities of the country, change the good customs in the land where they live for the purpose of taking their money or goods from them or from others. And, quote, in addition, no one shall disturb them in any way during the celebration of their festivals, whether by day or by night, with clubs or stones or anything else. Also, no one shall exact any compulsory service of them unless it be that which has been accustomed to render in previous times. I will say this, I am all for treating the Jewish people like it's the Middle Ages. Let's be tolerant to leave them alone, as per Catholic teaching, and let's go with what the Church teaches, and anyone who wants to do otherwise is giving into mob rule or paranoia. And Gregory X is not alone in this. Gregory the Great, Pope St. Gregory the Great, is famous for when there was a Jewish man who converted to Christianity, he held a old synagogue hostage, converted it into a church. The congregation complained to Gregory the Great, and he had the synagogue returned to the congregation. There are other cases. Saint Thomas Aquinas argued in his Summa against saying, no, you cannot take children out of their jurisdiction of their parents and baptism against their parents' will. He would even argue, according to Saint Thomas Aquinas in the Summa, that of all non-traditional Catholic religions, not even saying non-Christian, all non-traditional Catholic religions, the Jewish religion, as a religion, is the most honorable and dignified of them all. Because even though it no longer is a path to salvation, it once was. It once did hold that dignity. And it was the only way to achieve salvation. And those laws that the Jewish people follow today, keeping of Shabbat, circumcision, etc., I remember sitting with someone saying, the practice of the Jewish circumcision is barbaric. I remember telling them, you really want to call something barbaric that was directly established by God? That is a fact. Those laws were given on Sinai. And Aquinas ranks them above not just pagan and false religions like Hinduism or Shinto, but even, especially above heretical Christians, who Aquinas saw as the lowest of the low because they do as their perversion of the truth. Aquinas, so we should not be defending Holocaust deniers as Catholics. It's something I definitely think that Williamson he did get it wrong. At the best, even accepting Holocaust deniers narrative, Hitler was a maniac. Nazi Germany and the communists are the only two systems I'm aware of that has a decree issued by the Holy See against that explicit system of government. Traditional Catholicism is pretty open-minded for how you govern a country. What matters is what you do with it, but like, this is something, it was an immoral system outright. Mit Brander Sorge, Pope Pius XI, a decree that Pius XII also helped work on. Quote, whoever exalts race, or the people of the state, or a particular form of state, or dispositories of power, or any other fundamental value of human community, however necessary and honorable be their function in worldly things, whoever raises these notions above the standard value and divinizes them to an idolatrous level, distorts and perverts an order of the world planned and created by God. He is far from the true faith in God and from the concepts of life which that faith upholds. Metbrand de Sorge, paragraph 8. The Nazis, whatever you may say about the decrees of the Renaissance popes, it was the Renaissance popes, not the medieval ones, that really gave the real anti-Semitic, or anti-Semitic decrees. They were motivated by a desire to draw people to faith. So, a method which I think we can confirm 500 years after the fact did not work, and has done nothing but harden people of a Jewish background against becoming Christian. And indeed, I'm living in Israel right now. That is a big thing. What was going on back then? Surprisingly, insulting people, threatening people does not make them like you. Surprisingly, it simply did not work. But even then, it was done out of a motive to bring people to the true faith. That was not Hitler's motive. He was obsessed with racial purity. That was his motivations for the Holocaust, which, by the way, did happen even according to the Adeline Institute. They disagree with the extent, but it did happen. Period. And it was, and the way his goal was racial purity, not the promotion of faith. There were Jewish ghettos that had so many Catholics of Jewish ancestry in them that had fully functioning Catholic parishes. I think Dachau had a fully functioning Catholic church. There were Catholic priests of Jewish ancestry. There were nuns of Jewish ancestry. Edith Steen, who went into the camp. This was not a good. This was something that was horrific, evil, and wrong. And while I, in charity, and I generally do think Williamson, I think he was just being honestly paranoid about how the world has gone wrong and how he can't trust anything in the mainstream anymore. I think his actions did little but enable people who are obsessed with bigotry, who are not genuinely interested in winning people of the Jewish background to the Catholic faith, but only want to want to yabber on about how they despise the Jewish people, despise the Jewish religion, without any interest in actually converting these souls. And they want to latch on free speech, which, by the way, is overplayed and is a very Masonic opinion when taken to its extreme. They want to yabber on without consequences while still feeling that they are good Catholics. This is an evil, this is wrong, and I think this will be a great thing that will tarnish his legacy, and in my view, will and has cost souls. And if you're one of those people commenting down below, if you're one of those people who are watching this, stop. Stop. If you are one of these Holocaust deniers, look up YouTube on Jews for Jesus, where they point out because while they're Protestant, they make a lot of good content on, or one is Israel ministry. They're Protestant, but they do a really good job of taking Jewish rabbinical tradition and the Bible, the Old Testament, and showing that Jesus is the promised Messiah. And they're actually trying. They're Protestant heretics, but my goodness, they're actually trying at doing what Catholics should do in evangelizing. Not yabbering on and on in hatred and bigotry, thinking about how wonderful they are. They're actually trying to bring the Jewish people to Christ. They're actually trying to do something that is good. You are just doing nothing but scandalizing people. With all due respect. Anyway, regardless of what you think of Richard Williamson, please say a prayer for his repose. I am going to head out in a bit to make the Stations of the Cross in his memory in just a short while now. Please get a plenary indulgence for him if you can. Keep him in your daily rosary. And say a few Hail Marys. Anyway, God bless. And if you ever get a chance in your life, please check out SSPX Chapel. Hail Mary, full of grace, Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen.